Have you ever looked at yourself in the mirror, not to fix your makeup, not to adjust your hair, but just looked? And then something quiet and unspoken made you pause. It wasn't the lines, and not quite the age either. It was a feeling that something was off, as if your face was being subtly dragged down by the very hairstyle you once believed was safe, neat, or age-appropriate. You haven't changed your haircut in years, not because you didn't want something new, but because you were afraid of feeling like a stranger to yourself. But here's what no one tells you. Sometimes just changing the length, finding the right ending point, can not only make you look younger, it can bring back a light you forgot you ever had. There are 4 seemingly harmless mistakes women often make when it comes to hair length. 4 subtle hairstyle mistakes that age you, quietly making you look more tired, more closed off than you truly are. The good news is each one of them can be gently undone. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly how. 1. Holding on to long hair out of habit, not style. Linda stood in front of the mirror, her fingers gently playing with the ends of her hair, a habit she'd carried with her for nearly 4 decades. Next up, the moment your hair starts saying things you never meant to share, a yellow that no longer belongs to sunlight. 3. Brassy yellow. When your hair starts to turn on you. That hair had been with her through her 30s, 40s, and 50s, a symbol of who she was, soft, feminine, full of memories. But this time, under the glow of her bathroom lights, Linda paused. The hair was still long, still that familiar ash brown, but the softness was gone. In its place were dry, thinner strands, dull and lifeless. Her hair now fell straight down, pulled by gravity, dragging her face down with it, revealing sagging cheeks, a slender neck with visible tendons, and a forehead that seemed to recede deeper into shadow. Linda touched her cheek. She wasn't sad, just quietly contemplative. There's a truth no one ever says quite gently enough. After 60, hair changes just like skin, just like the voice. It becomes finer, loses its bounce and natural shine. When hair is kept too long, the ends often become frayed, brittle, no longer following the contours of the face, but instead hanging like a heavy cord. For those who once had high cheekbones or a sharp jawline, long hair can now unintentionally pull everything downward, following the slow tide of time. Not only that, long hair without the right shape often lacks the contrast needed to support the face. At this age, what makes a face glow isn't sharp angles, but the harmony of curves, movement, light. Without depth or lift, the eyes appear more tired, the smile less radiant. And that was what Linda had slowly begun to feel, even if no one had told her outright. It's one of those quiet hairstyle mistakes that age you, hiding in plain sight. We didn't suggest she chop it all off in a dramatic transformation. Linda didn't need to become someone else. She just needed a soft recalibration, a gentle lift, to let her true self come through again. When she agreed to try a new version, a shoulder-length cut that lightened the weight, with a few soft layers framing her cheeks, everything subtly shifted. Linda sat in the soft afternoon light as her new hair air-dried. It no longer hung stiffly like a curtain, but moved with each breath, each quiet tilt of the head. Her eyes seemed brighter, her cheekbones more luminous. There was something alive again in her gaze, not because she looked 10 years younger, but because the light had found its way back to her face. Her hair was no longer a replica of Linda at 30. It was a continuation, a version that honored the woman she was now, seasoned, grounded, still deeply feminine. And perhaps the most important part was this: we didn't take her memories. The years she'd lived remained in her heart, not in the length of a strand. Her choice to change wasn't about chasing trends or resisting time. It was simply that the light inside her needed a new frame to shine through. After 60, the one thing worth preserving isn't a relic of the past. It's the ability to evolve in the softest and most honest way. And sometimes all it takes is one small change to realize. You don't have to return to the past to feel beautiful. You just need a haircut that knows where you are now and lets you see yourself clearly, confidently, again. Linda no longer keeps her hair long, but she is still Linda. And this time she smiles at her reflection, not because it looks like who she was, but because it aligns with who she's becoming. And yet, even short hair can age us if we choose it for the wrong reasons. Just like Janet. 2. Cutting hair too close to the face, exposing every unnecessary angle. Janet walked into the salon with confidence. She was over 60, a widow, living alone in Colorado, and after years of caring for others, her children, her family, her job, she said it was time for liberation. And for Janet, that started with her hair. She asked for a cut that was short, clean, and bold. A style that required no tying up, no fuss every morning. The stylist obliged with a tight pixie crop, tapered at the nape, clipped closely on both sides, and fringe cut bluntly across her forehead. When she stood up from the chair, Janet felt renewed, but that feeling lasted only a few weeks. Months later, looking back at photos from a vacation, Janet noticed something off. In those snapshots, she looked oddly exposed. Her strong jawline, something she'd never really noticed before, now stood out sharply. Her chin looked firm, her neck short, and her once warm gaze now seemed to lack a place to land. Every feature was on display, like a sculpture stripped of its soft draping. When hair hugs the face too tightly, it loses the ability to soften natural features. For faces with angular traits, longer hair once subtly shaded the jaw, redirecting attention toward the cheeks or eyes. But when everything is cropped and cut away, the full structure of the face is laid bare, and that's not always necessary. Many women over 60 don't realize that hair isn't just an accessory, it's a tool for shaping how others experience your face. When you cut it close, you remove the soft reflection hair once gave you. If your neck is short, tight hair makes it vanish. If your cheekbones are high, slick down sides erase their lift. And if you've always carried a gentle presence, your gaze needs space to rest, not be pulled into harsh, unfiltered lines. Janet returned to the salon 3 months later, not to reinvent herself, but to rediscover her gentleness. She didn't abandon short hair, but this time she let it fall just below the earlobe. The fringe no longer ended sharply at the brow, but drifted softly like a wisp of cloud across her forehead. And that small detail, a few strands brushing against her cheeks, made her whole face feel like it could breathe again. No one told Janet she had to be more feminine. No one told her to be softer, but Janet felt herself returning. Her eyes relaxed, her chin no longer jutted harshly, her neck seemed to lengthen, and it all came from a gentler haircut, one that knew where to pause. Cutting short is not a mistake. In fact, it can be a true release. But how short? How tight? That deserves thoughtful attention, not just an emotional impulse. Some women look radiant in ultra-short, powerful cuts, and if that's where you see yourself, wonderful. But if you're searching for a softer space to land, then the length you choose might need a little breathing room, a bit of ease, a deliberate sense of lightness. After 60, your face doesn't need to reveal everything to prove something. It deserves to be celebrated with light, with movement, and sometimes just a veil of soft hair to gently shield what was once sharply defined, so that the kindness in your eyes can shine more clearly. Janet still wears her hair short, but this time she didn't cut it just to feel strong, she adjusted it to feel at peace. Not for anyone else, but for herself. And then, there are styles that seem carefully maintained, trimmed regularly, thoughtfully chosen, and yet still drag the face down, simply because we've grown too used to an old familiar cut. Like Susan. 3. Keeping hair one length with no layers, letting the face fall freely. Susan was a woman of precision. At 72, she still visited the salon every 3 months, like clockwork, never missing an appointment. Each time she sat in the chair, smiled, and said, "Same as always, no questions needed." Her stylist knew what to do, trim her shoulder-length hair into a uniform shape. No layers, no bangs, no variations. Everything was straight, clean, like a line drawn across time. For Susan, that haircut was part of her identity. It spoke of order, discipline, a life without detours. But one morning, as she tried on a new scarf in front of the mirror, Susan paused. Not because of the scarf, but because of her reflection. Something felt tired. Something looked pulled down. That spark of lightness she used to feel after brushing her hair just wasn't there. Her hair wasn't frizzy, wasn't dry, wasn't bad, but it felt still. A heavy block, flat and unmoving, offering no guidance for the eye. It clung tightly to both sides of her face like a rigid frame. There were no highlights, no lifts, no soft distractions. After 60, hair is no longer just a way to cover the scalp or decorate the head. It has a job to do. It must lift the cheeks, soften the jawline, bring dimension to the gaze. Hair with no layers means no volume, no shape, no movement, and that can cause the entire face to appear as if it's falling downward. On aging skin, that means every little sag is dragged into the light, unflatteringly and unnecessarily. Susan didn't need to transform her world. She just needed a stylist with a gentle hand, someone who could preserve the comfort of her familiar look while delicately enhancing it, like a breeze skimming over still water. The strands near her ears were trimmed into soft, face-framing layers. A subtle curve around the cheekbones. A touch of lift at the crown, so faint it felt like her hair was simply rising on its own. And the ends! Still the same length, but no longer a curtain of weight. They became a lightweight scarf, resting gently on her shoulders. After that cut, Susan no longer saw a block of hair in the mirror each morning. Instead, she noticed subtle movement in the way her hair shifted when she bent down to water the plants, when she turned to smile at someone, or simply when she opened the door to let the sun in. Her hair moved with her, not ahead, not behind, just alongside like a good friend. No one told Susan she looked 10 years younger, but they did say she looked brighter, softer, that her eyes sparkled more. And for Susan, that was enough. Because sometimes what makes women over 60 radiant isn't some dramatic change. It's a gentle return to themselves through the smallest of shifts. Keeping hair one length is an easy habit to fall into. But that comfort often blinds us from looking again. When hair stops moving, the face stops speaking. And if you were once the kind of woman whose stories were told through a glance, a smile, or the subtle tilt of your head, then maybe, just maybe, you deserve hair that knows how to tell that story with you. Susan didn't change her hairstyle. She simply changed how it moved. And that, for her, was enough to feel beautiful without having to go far at all. But sometimes, it's not the length or the style. It's the position where the hair ends that quietly steals away grace, making a soft face appear weighed down. Just like Diane. 4. A chin-length bob with no extension down the neck, making the face look boxed in. Diane was often described as elegantly classic. At 66, she still upheld a refined, aesthetic ivory turtlenecks, soft gray blazers, silk scarves tied loosely around her neck. And her hair? A neat chin-length bob cut straight, precise to the inch. Her stylist once said, "This is the universal cut neat, modern, youthful." Diane believed that. But one day, at her daughter's small birthday gathering, Diane caught a glimpse of herself in a candid side photo. Her neck seemed to vanish into the high collar. Her face looked more square than usual. And, strangely, though the face and the eyes were still hers, the overall impression felt shortened, as if the image had been cropped, missing the space it needed to breathe. It's something most don't consciously notice, but the ending point of your hair, exactly where it touches, can alter the entire perception of height, elegance, and openness. A chin-length bob might seem like the perfect balance, but for women with shorter necks, broad shoulders, or square faces, that precise line can become a visual break, disrupting the natural flow. Hair that doesn't extend beyond the neck causes the head and shoulders to merge into a solid block. No transition, no movement. The gaze becomes trapped at the jawline, while the neck, already softened, with time fades into the background. When paired with high collars, scarves, or modest clothing, the effect becomes even heavier, more closed off. With Diane, we didn't change her haircut. It was still a bob. Still that sleek, sophisticated look she loved. But this time, we added just a bit of length enough for the ends to skim gently past her chin. The line softened, curving slightly inward, like a graceful embrace for her face. When Diane tried on that same silk scarf again, the first thing she noticed wasn't her hair, it was herself. She looked taller, lighter, and her neck, the neck that had once disappeared, now appeared like a slender ribbon of light, supporting her entire presence. Her stylist said, "I didn't change your haircut. I just changed where it ends. And that made Diane smile because she knew what she'd regained wasn't just an outer look, but her full presence, from face to silhouette. After 60, every small detail can either weigh you down or lift you up. A haircut doesn't just shape, it evokes feeling. And when it ends in the right place, touches the right spot, your hair becomes more than the top of your face. It becomes the elegant frame through which your true beauty is seen. Diane didn't change who she was. She was still the woman who walked with quiet grace, who chose silk over sparkle, who preferred subtlety over display. But this time, she didn't let her haircut restrict her features. She let it guide the eye farther down to the neck, to the shoulders, then back up to the soft, steady gaze she'd always carried. And sometimes, it's the most familiar things that keep us unknowingly stuck in an outdated image. But with just a shift, even a single line of hair women over 60 can feel brighter, lighter, and more free. The journey with hair after 60 isn't about reclaiming youth. It's about discovering the softer, truer, wiser version of yourself each time you look in the mirror and see your reflection fully and unapologetically you. Some changes are so small, yet they open up something entirely new when you look at yourself in the mirror. Not to look younger, not to look like someone else, but simply to feel a little more lit from within in a way that feels uniquely yours. If you're standing at that threshold somewhere between the comfort of the familiar and a quiet longing for something new, then I hope this video felt like a different kind of mirror. A gentler one, just enough for you to see yourself in a softer light. Just leave a boo if you've never tried changing your hair length, or a 1 if you have nothing more. A tiny number, maybe. But who knows, it might open the door to a much bigger conversation. And if there's something you've been wondering about, like, what hairstyle could soften my face? Or, what should I do with thinning hair after 60? You can write it down. Or just say, tell me more. I'll know. And if this space feels light enough for you to return to, then stay a while, okay? I'll still be here every week with things even truer than hair.